So in this topic, we would be focusing on human development, a very important and essential part of understanding the growth of civilizations. So before we begin with, let's understand what is the actual difference between a growth and a development. So when we talk about growth, it's just increase in numbers, as simple as that. However, development is a kind of plant growth that is registered, and it is incremental in nature. It talks about the overall quality of life, the overall well-being of life. So when we are trying to understand development, it is foremost to understand whether a region is developed, it is underdeveloped, does development underdevelopment coexist, is there a gap between haves and haves nots. And what we focus on is three essential elements that have been mentioned under the human development index, and that is the level of literacy, that is education, health facilities, and the overall quality of life. And it's rightly being said, development is freedom. Now it is associated with modernization, it is associated with leisure, comfort, affluence, or it could be any other criteria. But yes, development is freedom, freedom from bondages, freedom from illiteracy, freedom from malnourishment, and that is what is a true definition for development. So we need to understand that we focus on development as not that only equals should be treated equally, rather we focus on everyone to be treated equally. Now there are two views about development. The first is the Euro-centric view or the Western view. Now this Western view is pretty simple. It talks about the extent of industrialization, urbanization, the facilities of transport and communication that is available, a good network of medical systems, a good network of education systems, good safety, security, lower crime ratio, and overall higher standards of living. But this is not the end in itself. When we talk about a country like India or any other developing country, the major issue that has been witnessed is of colonization. The imperial powers have held their foot hard into the soil, and as a result it is very difficult to move out of the shackles of the underdevelopment and the bondages that were bestowed to us. So marginalization, which focuses on the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, as in the case of India, or the reservation colonies in United States. There has been marginalization of blacks in South Africa. So there are cases where we understand that when there is marginalization, there is not equal opportunity. And when there is not equal opportunity, we do not understand development in the definition and the way it should be. Again, there are areas where we find regional disparities. Some of the areas flourishing very good with education, healthcare, water availability, and overall infrastructural facilities. The other regions are on the other extremes where they have adequate lack of the basic facilities. And definitely social discrimination had its root deep into the society. With the advent of numerous social reformers in India, we have come up with a kind of evolutionary system, but yet still a lot needs to be changed. So whenever there is a kind of inequality that exists, who suffers the maximum? Definitely it's poor who suffers the maximum. Now poor suffers because of three criteria. The first is the environmental capabilities, that is the surrounding pollution, the unhealthy unhygienic conditions. The second is the social capabilities, and that is due to the weakening or the displacement of the social ties that exist. And finally, due to personal capabilities, and that is due to unhealthy unhygienic conditions, there is higher proportion of disease incidents, higher proportion of accidents that are witnessed. So development needs to be addressed with social equality, with more of regional balances, we could say, and better environmental quality. And once that is attained, we can say that we can bring in parity or equality for everyone. And whenever we talk about development, it should not create or reinforce any kind of existing crisis that occurs. Now human development index has been considered as one of the major parameters to understand the development across the various three factors that we have already discussed. And it firmly believes that development should not be woven around people, rather development should be woven around people and not people around development. So it's very very important that it should not be, let's say you have a good iron steel industry flourishing here, so you start to bring in people here and bring in development, because there are resources and you are bringing in people for development. Rather, where people are, be it the tribal pockets, be it the hilly pockets, you have to take the development to that region and bring in more avenues for growth. Now, again, a very very important indicator as given by UNDP, that is the United Nations Development Program, which first laid down the Human Development Index in 1990 under Mehboob Haq, and that was an idea where they were trying to bring in all countries with better opportunities, better physical environment, better political freedom, more of self-respect and more of human rights. So those were the criteria that were taken into account when we are focusing on human development index. So as we said, we have the three paramount development. So first is the life expectancy, the second is the knowledge or the education, and the third is the decent standard of living, which talks about gross national income per capita. Now a cube root of these three indicators multiplied together, so indicator of life, indicator of knowledge, indicator of living, would be the resultant, which is the human development index. So these three dimensions must be taken into account to achieve a kind of healthy lifestyle with more development, and we must focus on the issues of inequalities that exist into the society, the issues of human security, poverty, empowerment. But these issues have been missing from this index. So what we require is, might be certain other indices which are able to trace these issues. I repeat again, the issues of poverty, the issues of human security, safety and security, the issues of empowerment, the issues of inequality. So inequalities, besides the three parameters that we have focused on, are actually missing from HDI. So when we are focusing on an overall growth and development, we need to focus on strategies that could bring in development besides these criteria. Now India is definitely doing a good scoring across various criteria, but still India's position is far behind. Along the group of all countries, as per the latest reporting, India is at 129th rank, which is far behind than many of the Asian countries as well. So if we look at the HDI value of the world versus India, so this is the world values and these are the India values, we can understand how we lag behind in each of the parameter. So we see a very very significant way where there is to be need for development. Some of the factors that have led us to weak human development index is primarily the issues of colonization, the imperial powers, and the socio-cultural factors, which have created a huge amount of social disparity and social inequalities in the society. Also, when we are focusing on the changes, we need to understand how the countries who have been working well are performing. So let's talk about Norway, Switzerland, Ireland, Germany and Hong Kong. These are the top 5 rankings across the human development index with the highest value of 0.954, where if we talk about India, it was just 0.64. So we can understand how far we need to go. If we talk about India per se, so this is the statistics for India. We have a decent number of mobile connectivity. However, the mobile connectivity and internet usage is far below the other nations, where in other nations you have at least 1.3 connections per head. In India we have far less usage, as we can see. Similarly, with a huge demography and a huge kind of diversity in population, it is really challenging for a country like India to have strong roots for good human development. But yes, there have to be ways through which skilled labor power has to be increased, life expectancy needs to be increased. The current life expectancy stands at 69.4 years, so that is a significant increase from the independence level. But yes, we have still higher marks to go for. And then human security rate is highly poor, so we definitely need to move on the parameters as discussed. The 2020 Human Development Index report talks about beyond income, beyond average, and beyond today. Now, beyond income focuses on inequalities in human development. Beyond average focuses on two important criteria, which is inequalities in income and gender inequality. And finally, beyond today talks about the environment. So that is the policy making, the climate change, and the technological potential that is there. Now, these indices are definitely a paramount indices to understand that with changing times, it's not just the inequalities in terms of education, health that needs to be addressed, but far, far beyond that, environment is again very, very important. If we talk about higher education, we can see the difference between the countries with high HDI ranking versus low HDI ranking. In high HDI ranking, nearly 55% of the population is attaining higher education. However, that proportion is only 3% in countries with low human development index. So there is again a very high educational divide, as we could say. If we talk about life expectancy in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of access to technology, we can see how the variation exists between the countries with low human development index versus the country with high human development index. In terms of education, again it varies from 42 to 93, which is again a huge gap. Life expectancy varying from 60 years to nearly 80 years, which is again a huge gap. Within India, if we talk about HDI, we have highest HDI for states like Kerala, we have higher HDI for Punjab, but on the other hand we have a huge regional disparity where we have very low figures which are registered for Odisha, for Bihar, for Chhattisgarh. So these are the states which are ranking extremely poor in terms of HDI parameters. Global HDI, Kerala stands at par with many of the world countries, and it lies in the mid HDI category. So Kerala definitely is doing well. When it comes to income, Maharashtra is one of the states, followed by Tamil Nadu, which is performing exceptionally well for income. However, on the lower edge, we have Bihar and Assam as the major states that are there. Again, for health, as we said, Kerala is doing exceptionally good, followed by Punjab, and that is the trend for global HDI as well as the health parameters. So for both of the parameters, Kerala and Punjab are the leading ones. Again, literacy rate becomes very important. In Kerala, we can rightly match it with the higher amount of literacy and the higher proportions of literacy rate as well. Now, economic indicators are again very important. So when we talk about the gross national product, the per capita availability, it becomes very important, and India has seen a drastic increase in the economic indicators over the year. Now, when we talk about GNP, how is this GNP calculated? GNP is nothing but the gross domestic product. The gross national product is the gross domestic product but plus the net factor income from abroad. Now, net factor income from abroad is an important criteria. It's basically talking about the foreign investments coming into the nation. Also, we are focusing on the availability of resource endorsement. We are focusing on per capita monthly income, which needs to be increased from 6.8 to nearly higher ratios, and Goa must have a very high income proportions that must be seen. Coming on to health indicators, death rate is a crucial parameter. Birth rate, death rate, infant mortality rate, we focus on life expectancies and child sex ratio. So child sex ratio is extremely poor for states like Punjab and Haryana, based on which we had the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Abhiyan that started. Birth rate, we have seen a significant changes, but yes, we are still to witness a decline in the birth rate, and death rate we have significantly taken into account, where the reduction has been seen from nearly 25 per thousand to 8 per thousand. So there has been a significant change that has been seen. Life expectancy has increased from 37 to nearly 65 and now nearly 69 as the latest records. So life expectancy has significantly increased from 1950s to 2020s, we could say, and therefore we have seen a significant change even in the birth rate, coming down from 40 to nearly 26, but is still far way to go ahead. So those are some of the health indicators. Coming on to school indicators and literacy, social indicators make it one of the most challenging tasks because the gap in the literacy, as we have seen, is significantly reduced. However, the proportion of male literacy is much higher than female literacy, which is one of the major reasons for a kind of undergrowth, we could say, in our economy or in our social setup. Again, you have higher female literacy in the states like Kerala, Lakshadweep, where we see overall prosperity as much higher. Three of the states, Kerala, Lakshadweep and Mizoram, are among the top leading states in terms of female literacy. So Kerala, Lakshadweep and Mizoram are the states where you have significantly higher rate of female literacy, and we have seen the states where we have, let's say, Bihar, Odisha, where significantly lower proportions are seen. So this is a kind of table which helps us understand the states with top 5 rankings in terms of literacy and the bottom 5 in terms of literacy. So that is how we understand that we need not to only understand literacy as a whole, but the scenario of literacy in terms of female literacy, in terms of literacy among scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, agricultural labor, marginal worker, tribal population. So that there is where we need to understand whether real development has taken into account or not. So these were some of the major indicators of human development that we have discussed with the latest statistics. Definitely, as you move forward, you would have more statistics to include with the new census coming up. Stay tuned for many more updates from our side. Have a wonderful day ahead.